everybody, and welcome to Coastal with Kathryn. I am so excited because where am I? I'm at the Concours d'Elegance, and this is really exciting year because they're celebrating their 20th anniversary. And the theme for this show we're talking about, look at those. Those are vintage Grand Prix cars. One is from 1908, which is amazing. I actually had a chance to tour in one yesterday, driving around Savannah, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And the other car, the theme for the show is they're talking about cars from Deutschland. They're German cars, and we're going to learn about the future, the present, and the past. So lots of exciting stories to be shared with. And one more thing, there's over 100 cars here from around the world. So there's a lot to see, and I'm so excited. Stay with me. As we are gathered together, we are gearing up for our adventure. As you can see, we're wearing white overalls, a helmet hat with goggles, and that was the uniform of the day. I want to thank Brian Blaine for driving me on this tour. He is well known in the vintage Grand Prix car world, and it was a delight to spend time together. And we're off on our tour to Savannah. Along the route, we visited the Bethesda Academy, which is a school for boys. It was originally an orphanage in the 1700s. We then continued following the original route of the racetrack, and that brought us to our lunch stop, and that was the Driftaway Cafe. And they gave us great southern hospitality. We were met with a crowd of people so excited to see these vintage cars. So what makes this car so special?
1911 National Automobile. National Automobile Company was based in Indianapolis, Indiana, and this particular car, not one like it, but this actual automobile ran in the 1911 Indianapolis 500 race, the first year of the Indy 500, and finished 7th with Charles Murs driving.
Also, what's very unique about this car is that from that original race, there's only 4 known to exist to this very day. So that's what makes this also extremely special.
So tell me about the passion of a driver.
You have to almost be raised in this or get a start in this at a very young age, or maybe a little later. But our true emphasis is to get the next generation interested in these cars. Not to just look at them in a museum, stationary. These cars are meant to be driven and experienced fully. If you're going to have a car sitting in a museum and that's all it's doing, you might as well just hang a picture there.
What do you think?
To truly experience the whole car, well, take it out and drive it.
Yeah.
That's what they're supposed to be. That's how they're supposed to be treated. Not abused or anything like that, but driven in the way they were meant to be driven.
And it's extremely inspiring. I mean, when you get to interact with something from the past like this and have a chance to understand it, it gives you a stronger appreciation for where we're at now. And how many leaps and bounds in technology has been made along the way without losing respect for what people came up with in the beginning. Because none of this stuff is just easy. People had to come up and think about this stuff. People talk about these cars being simple all the time. There's no simple thing about any of this stuff. It's just another language connected parallel through time. So it's just a different thing. But
reality is a lot more fun than the virtual world. We have more fun than you can imagine, and we invite the future to join us.
Well, as we get done with our journey, I want to thank Brian Blaine, who is the driver of the car, but also he brought 5 other cars. Amazing collector, and we're going to go up to the Concours d'Elegance and check them out while they're being shown tomorrow at the plantation. So I want to say thank you, Brian, for
you were a great riding mechanician.
mechanician.
You passed the test.
Oh, thank you. being part of the Concours, the Grand Prix vintage cars are themed this season, and I am so excited that I've had so much fun being part of the tour. I've been in Savannah, and now I'm at the course here where the beautiful cars are being displayed today. And I'm right here with Bill Bennett, who is one of the drivers who keeps these cars going all the time. And they have a team that is amazing of these Grand Prix cars. They're all vintage, and they're all from the 1900s to what's the years?
About the newest we have is 1920.
1920. Each car is from a different year, and each car has a new technology, if that's possible to say.
To a degree, yes.
To a degree. And this car that we are in right now, tell me about this one.
This is a 1912 Packard. It was originally a street car, but was converted to a race car in 1912, and competed in the Visalia Road races from 1912 to 1914. Actually won the race in 1914 with Billy Campbell driving.
That's amazing. Now, how fast can this car go?
Top speed on it right now is about 80 miles an hour.
And I want to tell you something about this. Now that I've had experience driving in these cars, there's no seatbelts. There's no row bars. There's nothing here to just protect you. You just kind of, you're in and you're out, right?
Exactly.
But before we go too far, I also want to ask Bill, Bill, you've been passionate about cars. And being here at the Concours, everybody has some piece of it. Either you grew up fixing the cars and wanting to know more about cars, to owning cars. But for your passion, tell me about that.
Well, I started working on antique vehicles when I was 9 years old. And as things developed and as I grew older and maybe a little more mature, maybe not, it suddenly became apparent that not many people were carrying on the tradition of restoring and preserving antique vehicles. So what we're trying to do is let people experience what these cars were, what they did, what they contributed to life as we know it now. This is what put America on wheels and gave us the freedom to drive to any destination or location we can in this great country. And without the technology that was available back in the early 1900s and then progressing through what we experience now, we have to remember and understand where all of this came from, and this is where it came from.
Very well said. I mean, you really capsulized that. Wonderful. I just love that. And then the other thing I want to talk to you about is, all right, I actually had this outfit on when we were touring in Savannah. So they wore white. That was their uniform. And you have your hat, right? Yep. And it's and you have the goggles. Put your goggles down for a second,
sure,
just to give them the authentic. So this is the uniform. This is the style for taking this car, right? And
exactly.
And the goggles were glass, correct?
That's correct. And if you look at some of the old photographs, you'll see some of the racers that had several pair of goggles on them. And a lot of people thought, well, that was the problem. Maybe they got blown off from the wind or something. No, there was so much mud and oil and everything that was splattering around on these race courses. The goggles got completely obscured. You couldn't see through them, so you would take them off and pull up another pair and put them on, so that you would have, it's kind of an early version of what we know as tear-offs today.
Well, that is great. Well, we have so many cars to see right now. You brought in 5 from California, so let's stop right here and let's go.
Perfect.
This car is really cool.
This is a 1916 Sturdivant. The chassis is actually a 1916 Auburn automobile. The engine is out of a 1916 Sturdivant World War I fighter aircraft. So it's airplane engine powered. The engine is 555 cubic inches, all aluminum, supercharged V8. Produces about 220 horsepower.
Well, I have to say, Bill, this is the car I actually was in. I drove in Savannah in this car with Brian, and it was amazing.
And was it a thrilling ride?
It was a thrilling ride. My teeth rattled a little bit, but it was awesome. So let's go to the next car.
Sure.
So we're all going to be anxious to see what it is that you chose.
What's unique about this car?
This is a 1912 Packard. It was originally a regular passenger car, but it was converted into a race car in 1912. It originally had 30 horsepower with modifications made for racing. It now produces about 50 horsepower. Top speed on this car is about 80 miles an hour. So it is very capable, and we still race it.
Do you now? Oh,
absolutely.
My word. Where do you race it?
This car is raced at Indianapolis. It's raced at Laguna Seca. It's raced in Sonoma and various other racetracks around the country.
It's interesting.
It's beautiful.
This is a 1908 Locomobile. one of two manufactured of this configuration. One interesting feature on this car is the final drive is chain driven on both rear wheels. If you look at that, it's pretty amazing. Remember, a lot of automobile manufacturers came from the bicycle industry, and so they transferred the technology of bicycle chain to the automobile. Look at the rear wheels. If you look at it, you can see the chain that drives the rear wheels on this car. Pretty amazing. Top speed on this car is about 90 miles an hour. So quite a very successful race car for back in the day.
What I love about this car, it's first car that was raced in the Indy 500. It's from 1911. And Bill, we also now have Charles Test. And your family has been part of the car world since the early 1900s. Hi, Charles.
Hi.
So tell me a little bit about your family history.
Well, my great-grandfather helped found National in 1900, back when they were making electric cars. And he was president until 1910, first 10 years of it. I'm a family historian, and so I'm interested in nationals.
It's interesting that, they're having electrical cars back then, so why did it fade away?
Well, battery technology and gasoline packed a lot more energy in a small space than electricity could.
And so the evolution today, they've figured it out?
Not necessarily, no.
necessarily.
Gasoline still packs a lot more energy than a battery.
Okay, the rolling.
This is one of four known vehicles that have survived from the 1911 Indianapolis 500. This car is probably the best preserved 1911 Indianapolis Motor Speedway vehicle left on the planet. The winner of the race, the Marmon Wasp, which is housed in the Indianapolis Museum, is also very well preserved, obviously. But in private ownership, this is probably the best one.
And how fast does this car go?
It'll go in excess of 100 miles an hour in present configuration.
And as we enjoy the Concours, the Elegance, we can't forget about our American cars. And I love this one. This is a Bonneville. It's beautiful in 1960, beautifully restored, and this is owned by Foster. So let's keep going. We had to stop by and meet Dirk de Groen, who is passionate about collecting German cars, specifically the BMWs. I think it came from his childhood, and he's going to give us some wonderful insight about these cars. And as I come up to introduce you to Dirk, who is the owner of these cars. Hello, how are you?
How are you, Kelly?
Very well. This car is spectacular. Just won in its class. I saw a lot of ribbons on it, right?
Well, it didn't win its class. I'm the honored collector this year, so it's really for us to be an honor that we were asked to bring 5 cars out here. We've been coming to Hilton Head Island for the last 12 years, and every year we bring a different car. And I make sure that friends of us, that other collectors, that they also come here. So as a thank you present, they asked me if I wanted to be honored collector this year, and that's of course an honor that you can't refuse.
Well, that's wonderful. To my understanding, your passion is the BMW car, and this happens to be the German theme for this year for the Concours. Tell us about that. I mean, I found through speaking to collectors that there's a particular make that they like. Right. So tell me about that.
That's correct. I mean, I grew up I was born and I grew up in the Netherlands, and I always liked BMWs. And my father drove a BMW, my grandfather drove a BMW. So obviously my first car was a BMW, and this is about 45 years ago now. And I've always been loyal to the mark, and I've been collecting BMWs after I retired for my finance job. I went back into BMWs, and I got the same car that I used to have when I was young. And from there it went all downhill. And now I have quite a few BMWs in my garage, and we store them. We store them. My wife and I, we drive them on rallies. We go on tours in the United States as well as international, and that's really what our passion is. And what we're looking at here today now is a 1937 BMW 328, and that is a car that was I bought it from a gentleman who had owned it for 55 years. He retired serviceman. He bought it from a retired serviceman who brought the car back to the United States in the late 40s, early 50s. And this was a car that was actually raced in in the period. And it was built for racing. It's a performance car, at least by 1937 standards.
Well, this is a wonderful car, but I also notice over here we have another 4. So why don't we take a tour and you can share more about your different cars and the passion.
So from the 1937 BMW 328 Roadster, we're going to a 1990 BMW, also a Roadster, and this is actually the first Roadster that BMW made, since the 507, which was in the 1950s. So this Roadster was built in 1990, and it's called the ZN. The Z stands for Zukunft, and Zukunft in German it means future. And it was, as a sort of a futuristic car, and they were trying out new materials. And all the body panels, they're all plastic, from plastic material, General Electrics. And it's just a marvelous car. And they didn't think they were going to make that many of them, but demand was so high, so they produced 8,000 of them. And then
What year?
this is in between 1989 and 1991. So this
Interesting. So this was a popular car.
This was, relatively popular. It was very expensive. At the time it cost in Germany 100,000 Deutschmark, which was, more than 2-3 times the price of a regular car. So, the price kept, of course, the demand in check.
Right. It was interesting how the innovation of having the door slide down like you just did.
Right. So we can do it from the inside as well.
See
So
how this goes back up?
And
And let me ask you, I once was told that the designs of cars are the test of time. I have not seen many models with the sliding door down.
It's the only one that I know. I've seen, from the 30s they had some sliding doors going from the back to the front, but this is the only one that I know that actually the door goes into the sill. And it's quite an interesting design, and this one is a really special car because it's one of the 66 that were tuned by Alpina, which is a specialized company in Germany that made them even more performant than what they already were. And it's just a lovely car. We always drive it with the doors down, with the top open. We live in Florida, so most of the time we got good weather, and it's a good weather car, and it handles phenomenally. It's just a lovely car.
Wonderful car.
Well,
it's very sleek, everybody.
Thank you
So let me
so
show
much.
you over here. Let's keep going. So I want to show you. It's red. It's sleek, great color. And over here, Dirk, we're going to go over to your green BMW.
Now we go over to a green BMW. This was at the time in the 1970s, this was the bread and butter of BMW. This was the 2002. This is the one that brought BMW on the map in the United States. The pre-war cars and the early post-war cars, they didn't really sell in the United States. But then they came with the Neue Class and with the 2002, and then everybody wanted this little zippy car. And this is a 1971, and it's also tuned by Alpina originally, and it has all the little Alpina little features. And actually this is similar to the car that I had when I was young in the Netherlands, and when I was 18 years old, my first car was an O2, a similar car like this one. So that's why I'm very attached to the model. And it's just a nice cruiser car. It's like I said, it's an Alpina, so it has the different steering wheel, the different gauges, the different seat. It has the Alpina engine, Alpina suspension, and it's just a lovely fast little car. Step back in time, and they were going back into the late 1950s. BMW was almost bankrupt, and they were about to be sold to Mercedes-Benz, and the shareholders, the smaller shareholders, they reacted very violently, and they were not happy with it. The employees were not happy with it. The dealers were not happy with it, and then they said, well, we got to try to keep this company private. And then they got an infusion of cash, and one of the reasons why the gentleman, the Quant family, invested in the company at the time is because they had developed a little family car. You know, remind you that, you know, after the war it was Isetas, little three-wheel cars, or the huge 5 Series, the 502, the 507s that were unaffordable, and you know their marketing plan was just absolutely horrible. And then finally they came with this car, which was, you know, when the Germans came back off their motorcycles into the little 3-wheeler cars, they wanted a family car, late 50s, early 60s, and they came out with the 600. And this is a little, you know, it's a little 600. This is the 600 Coupe, which I think is just an adorable little car, and it has it's all original. As you can see, there's little, you know, the holes have a little, you know, the seats have little holes in there, but that's the patina. That's what I like about the car, because these are the same seats and the same interior, same engine, same steering wheel, same everything, except for the radio might have been added later, as the car had when it was in 1960. And this particular car was delivered to a Frenchman that lived in Algeria in Africa in 1960. When the French got kicked out of Algeria in 1961, when they had the civil war, the French guy, who was a mechanic, who had a repair shop in Algeria, he picked up his tools and he came with this little 700, and he settled in France, in the neighbor of the Chamonix in France, close to the Mont Blanc. And he kept on working there, and he kept this car with him, and he kept it for the next 55, 60 years.
We also had to stop by and admire the McLarens, Audis, and Ferraris. And why do we always smile when we walk by these cars? Also, I found interesting, Dirk and his wife are passionate about cross-country road racing. That is a whole sport unto itself. Can you imagine driving from Peking to Paris? He's going to share with us his modified Benz. Well, as we have visited the BMWs, Dirk, we are now going to another car. And can anybody guess what this one is? Tell us about this, Dirk. It's a Mercedes-Benz.
The Mercedes-Benz. It's a car that I saw on the streets when I was a young boy in the Netherlands, and it's one of the cars that I always thought that, gee, this is a nice car, you know. And so at one point, about 15, 16 years ago, I saw one on eBay, and I bought it on eBay for just a few $1,000s, because it's a 4-door sedan, and no one was apparently interested in those cars. But for me, it was just a nice car to have. Then when we got, a few years later, when we got into rallying, then we were thinking, well, what would be a good rally car to prepare? Do I either prepare a BMW or do I prepare the Mercedes-Benz? And as much as I like BMWs, but the Mercedes-Benz is built much more solidly. It's a much stronger car. It's strong as a tank. And when we did the Peking to Paris rally, I sacrificed this car and I built it into a rally car. So the engine and the driveline is all original, but the suspension is all much stronger. We double welded everything. The whole thing came apart.
Well, let's take a look. Show us inside. I mean, you made this race worthy.
So we made this race worthy. So we put some comfortable seats in there. You know, here we have the rally computer on the right, and then we have all the little switches with the individual fuses and all the gauges that we think that we need. And this is the car that we raced from Peking to Paris. We took it to Southeast Asia. We started in Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Burma. Then the following year we took it to Africa. We went South Africa, Namibia, Botswana, and Zimbabwe.
So let me ask you, so as you're talking about the races, how long are these races?
These races are about a month to 5 weeks. So they're pretty long races, and they are competitive races. So there's a speed section on that. There's regularities, like time distance regularities. And this is a hobby that my wife and I enjoy, and my wife, because I lured her into it, because it's something that we can do together. If you go to the racetrack, you just sit by yourself in the car and you spend your weekends alone. And then I figured, well, if we want to have a hobby together, then rallying is the way to do it for us. So this car has really, it's we've taken this to 18 different countries, and it has never skipped a beat. I mean, it never let us down. Of course, we had to replace shocks, we had to replace springs, which is normal because most of the driving is on off-road, on gravel road rallies, and that's why you see, we got the big wheels. The car is lifted up a little bit, and to have nothing underneath the car, we removed remove the fuel tank from under the car, and we put the fuel tank in the trunks with all the filters and everything. We got our tools here, and the rear seat. If you look here, Kathryn, if you have a look here at the rear seat, here we carry our spare tires. The rear seat, this area is removed, and underneath this shelf here, that's where we keep the spare parts, because on those valleys you got to bring your own spare parts if something goes wrong, that that the mechanics can help you out. And we put a roll bar. I mean, for safety, of course, we need some structure, and just in case you have an accident, you roll over. And we put the exhaust. If you go a little bit down here, you see the side exhaust, so there's no exhaust hanging under the car. And and yeah, that's here we got those are the stickers that we earned on our various rallies, and this is that's what we enjoy doing.
You know, Dirk, I'm enjoying your passion. I mean, I love the idea that you took this car. What year is the car again?
This is a 1958.
And this 1958 car has now been just taken around the world.
Correct. Yeah.
In many ways of just touring.
Right.
And,
And keep in mind that this particular model car it was used for a long time in the Middle East and in South America and in Africa as a taxi. And those cars, they just kept on running, and they just they obviously taxi drivers in those kind of countries where the roads are not the same as the ones we enjoy here in the United States.
So let me ask you this: did this model car come to the States?
Yes, it is. It was sold new in the United States in 1958. It was sold here. Yeah.
Was it popular?
Not really.
No.
No.
I guess the American cars were on their way up, and they were doing their thing, huh?
Exactly. And the German cars were pretty expensive at the time, but I mean, they were not like hugely popular. They sold probably a few thousand.
Right. Well, Dirk, I want to thank you very much for sharing us with your collection. I know you have others as well, but I think you brought a nice broad spectrum of the evolution of the BMW and bringing in the Benz as a special delight. Thank you, sir.
All right. You're welcome. Thank you so much for your time.
We want to thank the Concours d'Elegance for their wonderful hospitality and congratulate them for celebrating their 20th anniversary. Boy, we can't wait to come back next year.